Welcome to this demonstration of the Platform Analytics installation with SSL enablement. In this video, we'll walk through the steps required to install Platform Analytics with SSL protections enabled. Platform Analytics actually uses the TLS protocol rather than SSL. However, the SSL term is still used in the user interface of the installer, so for simplicity, we'll continue to use the term SSL in this video. The install process has been streamlined so that the installer itself can automatically generate some of the individual trust stores as needed and import the necessary certificates. As we go, we'll discuss the certificates, key stores, and trust stores that are required for each component. During the installation demo, keep in mind that the Security Considerations section of the Analytics Help Center contains all the SSL information discussed in this video. Use the URLs shown on the screen and navigate to the individual sections that provide SSL support for ThingWorx, RabbitMQ, Flink, and Analytics Server. You can find sample commands in each section. Now let's begin the installation procedure. We'll start by launching the installer. Click Next on the Welcome screen. We'll select all the components so we can see the SSL enablement for each, including integration with Analytics Server for anomaly detection. Click Next. We'll accept the default installation location. On this screen, we'll configure connection information for the ThingWorx server. You can enter localhost or an IP address. Enter port number 8443. For the ThingWorx app key, we'll need to switch over to ThingWorx Composer, copy the application key, and paste it into the app key field. To protect the communication between Platform Analytics and the ThingWorx server, we'll select the Use SSL checkbox. Let's stop here for a minute and consider the requirements to enable SSL on this screen. For the ThingWorx server, you will need a key store with a signed SSL certificate. Obtaining this certificate should be part of your ThingWorx installation procedure. You can use either a certificate from a trusted CA or a self-signed certificate. The ThingWorx Trust Store will be generated automatically by the installer, but you will be prompted to provide a password for it during the installation. Let's return to the installer screen. We've just mentioned that the ThingWorx Trust Store will be generated automatically by the installer, but we can also opt to have the installer import the ThingWorx certificate into the Trust Store automatically. We just select the checkbox, Upload ThingWorx Certificate File. Note, however, you can download the certificate from a browser or wherever ThingWorx is installed and import it manually. Now we need to click the folder icon next to the ThingWorx certificate field and browse for the certificate. This is the PEM certificate file that was created when ThingWorx server was configured for SSL. Enter a password for the Trust Store that will be created automatically by the installer. When we click Next, the ThingWorx connection is verified. On this screen, we'll configure RabbitMQ. We'll enter admin for the username, enter a password, and confirm it. To configure RabbitMQ for SSL, we need to generate some certificates, both for RabbitMQ and for the Property Transform client. Let's pause here and look at those requirements. SSL for RabbitMQ can protect connections to both the Flink service and the ThingWorx server. Before we can start creating SSL certificates, we need to create two configuration files that will be necessary for creating the certificates. These config files can be created in any text editor, and you can find examples in the SSL Support for RabbitMQ section of the Help Center. Next, we need a RabbitMQ CA bundle file. This contains the authority that will sign our SSL certificates. You can use a certificate and key from a trusted CA or follow the steps in the help to create them. Then we need to create SSL certificates for both RabbitMQ and the client, which in this case is our Property Transform service. In both cases, we'll first create a key and then a certificate signing request. When the certificates are generated, information is used from the config files we created earlier, and the certificates are signed by the authority in the RabbitMQ bundle file. The RabbitMQ certificate will be imported as a PEM file into the trust store that will be auto-generated by the installer. However, the client certificate needs to be converted into a PKCS12 format. We'll see that step when we go back to the installer. Optionally, if we also want to protect the RabbitMQ connection to the ThingWorx server, we'll need to create a JKS trust store called Broker SSL Server Trust Store. We need to ensure that the authority that signed the ThingWorx SSL certificate is included in the RabbitMQ CA bundle. Then we need to import the RabbitMQ CA bundle into the JKS trust store. We also need a PKCS12 file to be placed on the ThingWorx server. It will be used to identify the ThingWorx server to RabbitMQ. We can create a new file or use the same PKCS12 file we created for the client. And finally, we need to update the platform settings.json file of the ThingWorx server to include certain SSL-specific parameters in the platform settings config section. That's a lot to take in, so let's return to the installer and walk through it step by step. First, we need the CA certificate that will sign all of the RabbitMQ certificates we create. If you already have a CA certificate, you can reuse it. Otherwise, see the SSL support for RabbitMQ topic in the Help Center for instructions on creating the RabbitMQ CA bundle. We'll click the Browse icon, and we'll find the ca.pem file and select it. Now we're ready to generate the RabbitMQ certificates. We'll move to a terminal window. First, we'll create a key for RabbitMQ using this command. The key is necessary to create a signed RabbitMQ certificate. Next, we'll generate a certificate signing request with this command. You are prompted to answer a few questions. We can answer each question here. When prompted for the common name, we'll enter localhost. You can skip the email and the challenge password. Now we're ready to generate the RabbitMQ certificate itself. Here's the command. When we do an ls command, we should now see a couple of files, a PEM certificate file and the RabbitMQ key file. Let's enter these files into the installer. We'll click the Browse icon next to the certificate file field. Browse for the RabbitMQ certificate.pem file we just created. Click the icon next to the key file. Browse for the RabbitMQ key.pem file we just created. Then enter a password for the RabbitMQ trust store that will be generated automatically by the installer. Next, we need to create some files for the client. We need to end up with a PKCS12 file that can be used to identify the property transform and Flink services to RabbitMQ. This file must contain a certificate and a corresponding key. And it must be signed by the authority in the RabbitMQ CA bundle. To create these files, we'll switch back to the terminal window. We'll start by generating a client key with this command. Then we'll create a certificate signing request for the client. Here's the command. It will prompt for the same questions as before. We can enter the same responses. Now we're ready to generate the certificate itself. Here's the command. If we do an ls command, we can see both the client key and the client certificate have been created. Now we need to convert the client certificate to a PKCS12 file. We can do that with this command. For the password, use the Broker SSL Client Store password. You can find this password in the Platform Settings Config section of the platformsettings.json file in your ThingWorx server. And here's the client PKCS12 file we just created. Finally, to protect the RabbitMQ connection to the ThingWorx server, we need to create a JKS trust store. Use this command. It will create the trust store, import the RabbitMQ CA bundle file into it, and assign an alias name to the bundle in the trust store. For the password, use the Broker SSL Server Trust Store password. It can be found in the Platform Settings Config section of the platformsettings.json file for your ThingWorx server. When prompted to trust the certificate, enter Yes. Now we can see the Broker SSL Server Trust Store.jks file. We'll use this file inside the ThingWorx Platform Settings.json file. It should look something like this. Here we can see two places where the information is used. Now we'll return to the installer and enter the PKCS12 file. Click the icon to browse and select the client.pkcs12 file. And we'll enter the password. That completes the RabbitMQ configuration, and we can click Next. On this screen, we'll configure Flink REST SSL parameters. You can see that SSL is enabled by default. For Flink SSL connections, we'll need to create key stores and certificates for both the REST server and the REST client. Let's look at the requirements. SSL for Flink protects both server and client REST connections between Flink and external services. It also protects internal Flink connections, but those are configured automatically and we don't need to create any certificates manually. To protect the external connections, we start by establishing a root certificate authority and placing it in a trust store that the other Flink certificates will reference. You can use a certificate and key from a trusted CA, but you will still need to import the certificate into the trust store. To create the Flink SSL connections, the same process is used for both the Flink REST server certificate and a Flink REST client certificate. In each case, we can use certificates from a trusted CA or follow the steps in the Help Center to generate self-signed certificates. In both cases, we will need to manually import both the CA and the REST server or client certificates into the appropriate signed key store. Let's go back to the terminal window and walk through the steps to create these certificates. First, we need the CA that will sign all the certificates we'll be creating. For this demo, we'll generate a self-signed certificate by running this command. Next, we'll use this command to export the certificate. You can see the ca.keystore has been created. Finally, we'll use this command to create a trust store from the CA. And here you can see the CA trust store file. Now we're ready to create the Flink REST certificate and key pair. Run this command to create a key store file that contains a public certificate and a private key. Now we can see the rest.sign.keystore has been created. We'll create a certificate signing request, and then run this command to generate the REST certificate that's signed by the CA. We can see the rest.serve file here. Next, we'll run two commands to import the signed CA and REST certificates into the REST signed key store. Here's the command to import the CA certificate. And here's the command for the REST certificate. So now we have all the Flink REST server certificates, but we still need to generate the client certificates. For this, we'll use a similar process. First, we'll use a gen_key_pair command to generate the client key store that contains a certificate and a key. We'll create a client certificate signing request. and will generate a certificate signed by the CA. Now we need to import both the CA and the client certificates into the client-signed key store. Here's the command to import the CA certificate. And now the command to import the client certificate. Now if we use an ls command, we should see several files that we've just created. We can see the client signed key store, and here's the REST signed key store, and also the CA trust store. Now we can return to the installer. First, we need to browse for the REST key store file. And we'll enter the key store password. We'll use the same password for the REST key. Next, we need to browse for the client key store file. Enter the key store password and the client key password. And finally, we need to browse for the REST trust store file. And enter the password. Now we're done configuring the Flink parameters, and we can click Next. On this screen, we'll configure the Analytics Server connection. Note that this screen will only be displayed if you selected the Integration with Analytics Server for Anomaly Detection option at the start of the installer. Let's consider the SSL requirements. Implementing SSL here protects the connection between the ThingWorx adapter and the Analytics microservice APIs. For the Platform Analytics installation, this protection is necessary only when integrating with the Analytics server for the purpose of using anomaly detection. To enable SSL for the Analytics API layer, we need the key store with a signed SSL certificate that we created during the Analytics server installation. It can be a certificate from a trusted CA or a self-signed certificate. However, the certificate is a JKS file for Analytics Server, and we'll need to export it as a PEM certificate for Platform Analytics. The Analytics Server Trust Store will be generated automatically by the installer, but you will be prompted to provide a password for it during the installation. This will be a new Analytics Server Trust Store created by the Platform Analytics installer. Let's return to the installer. First, we need to enter the IP address where the Analytics server is installed and running. As well as the port number. Here we need the API key that was automatically generated at the end of the Analytics server installation. We'll click the checkbox to enable SSL for Analytics microservices. Now we need to find the JKS key store file from the Analytics server. We'll return to the terminal window and navigate to the file. This is the JKS key store file that was created during the Analytics server installation. We'll use this command to export the Analytics server certificate as a PEM file from the key store. You'll need to enter the password you assigned to the key store when it was created. We can now see a file called analyticsserver.pem. We'll use this file in the installer. We need to browse for the PEM file we just exported. Finally, enter a password for the Analytics Server Trust Store that will be generated automatically by the installer. When we click Next, the Analytics Server connection will be verified. The configuration summary is displayed. If everything looks correct, click Next to begin the installation. When the installation completes, click Finish. To check that everything is installed and running, we can open ThingWorx Composer. We can navigate to the Things page, and we can see the things for property transform, statistical monitoring, and statistical calculation. We can check to make sure each of these things are connected. First, we'll open the property transform thing. We can see by the small green icon in the top left that it's connected. We'll go back to the Thing page and open Statistical Monitoring, and we can see this message that it's connected. And finally, we'll open the Statistical Calculation thing, and it's also connected. Thanks for watching this demonstration of the Platform Analytics installation with SSL. Check out the Help Center for more information.